A few weeks ago, we covered the history of Texas and Pacific's 210-4 I-1 class locomotives. Out of the 70 built throughout the later half of the 1920s, only 2 would survive the initial scrapping. While the 638 was donated to the city of Dallas for the Texas State Fair, it would be scrapped just a few years later due to vandalism and theft. However, the 610 story would only be beginning when the time came for it to make way for the new era of diesel power. Join us as we go through an incredible journey that led to 610 becoming the Lone Star icon known by many today. Before its fame, 610 was just like the 69 other Texas types on the TNP. It would be the first engine of the second batch of 210-4s. Labeled as a I-1A, 610 would be built by the Lima Locomotive Works in June of 1927. 610 would come with a hefty price tag of over $106,000, which sits right around $1.9 million in today's money. 610 would travel across the Texan countryside between Texarkana and El Paso, while also occasionally working in Louisiana. In the years approaching World War II, the president of the road would order the Texas types to be rebuilt. 610 would be among the locomotives upgraded, and its designation would receive an additional letter R at the end, making it an I-1AR. With the rebuild, 610 could reach higher speeds and would receive numerous mechanical improvements. Soon after the war, diesels were rapidly replacing steam along the TNP. In the second month of 1950, after clocking in well over 1 million miles, 610 would be retired from active revenue service. For 11 months, 610 would patiently wait in deadlines for its next assignment that would never come. But by chance, the mayor of Fort Worth had an interest in preserving some of the machines that carried the nation for so many years. 610 would be selected out of the deadline and donated to Amon G. Carter, who in turn would donate it to the Southwestern Exposition and Fat Stock Show. Utilizing a spur line built by the Frisco, 610 would be relocated alongside the Will Rogers Memorial Coliseum, where it would be named after Will Rogers. Unfortunately, 610 would quickly be vandalized with thieves stealing parts much like its sister engine 638. Unlike it though, 610's owners would build a fence around it and invest money to replace missing components. Upon the passing of Amon Carter, 610's protection would soon disappear. By 1968, the locomotive had heavily deteriorated as the Exposition had no longer maintained the locomotive. Some property redevelopments of a TCU fraternity were being planned, and this would involve ripping up the spur line that connected 610's display site to the Frisco's main line. A campaign was raised by local rail experts to have the locomotive donated and avoid another 638 incident. Fort Worth would transfer ownership of the engine to David Pearson and a group of rail enthusiasts for the price of $1. Once moved to the local Army depot, the 610 Historical Foundation was formed with a mission to see the old workhorse fired up once more. As the foundation began finding experts and raising funding, Pearson would find potential routes for the locomotive to pull excursions. Unfortunately, there would be no luck in finding a host railroad for 610. Every company approached by the foundation, including the original owners of the engine, would decline the proposals of operating on their rails. With fundraising struggling, paired along with several dead ends on a location to run, things were looking dire for the 610. That is, until 1974. The American Freedom Train was in its early planning stages for the cross-country tour to celebrate the nation's bicentennial. The foundation would successfully negotiate the 610, a Texan portion of the tour to lead. The only trick was that the locomotive had to be restored and ready to roll on time. A massive fundraising event commenced to raise the estimated $100,000 price tag to restore the engine. Many donors, such as Amon Carter Jr., would fund the restoration taking place at the engine's new home in the Fort Worth stockyards. Richard Jensen was brought in from Chicago for his expertise in steam locomotive maintenance. Thousands of new parts would have to be fabricated, along with most of the remaining parts requiring heavy refurbishment. By October of 1975, the boiler had passed state testing. Despite the deadline to complete the engine being delayed twice, the restoration would be complete on January 28, 1976. The following day, it would make its first moves under its own power within the yard. The following week, 610 would undergo its first test run on the Fort Worth and Denver main line up to Wichita Falls. It wasn't a perfect test. A bearing issue would delay the train's arrival by 2 hours. Yet when 610 returned, it would run without flaw, while pulling a train at the same weight as the American Freedom Train. On February 15th, 610 would relieve the Southern Pacific 4449 in Austin to lead the train down to Houston. From Houston, it would make the trek up to Fort Worth, and then on to Dallas, where it would hand the train back off to the 4449. While only leading a small portion of the AFT tour, 610 would need some serious repairs to the crown sheets. In fact, just before it took the reins, brake shoes from Southern Pacific 786 had to be borrowed. Despite its well-received time leading the AFT, the Foundation would still struggle to find a home to operate 610 afterwards. Despite the successful runs over multiple railroads during the AFT excursions, those same companies would deny the requests of 610 running on them afterwards. There would be an outlier in all of this disinterest. In 1977, after inspecting the 610's condition, the Southern Railway and 610 Foundation would agree to leasing the 210-4. For years, the Southern had been running various steam excursions with several locomotives with various backgrounds. In need of a stronger locomotive to handle longer trains, 610 would be an ideal candidate. The locomotive would travel to Birmingham, Alabama, via the Mopac and ICG through Texas, Louisiana, and Mississippi before finally reaching Southern Rails in Meridian. From there, it would be sent to the Irondale steam shops. 610 would receive a makeover with Southern lettering, emblems, and a brass eagle ornament atop of the headlight. From 1977 to early 1981, 610 would run excursions through various states on the Southern system, such as Alabama, Tennessee, West Virginia, and others. While popular with passengers and rail fans alike, executives of the railroad would grow tired of the constant maintenance issues. Several bearing replacements, pilot damage, hotbox issues are just some of the issues scattered throughout the years. Eventually, Southern would lease Chesapeake and Ohio 2716 to replace the 610 in pulling its heavy excursions. In late January 1981, 610's finale on the Southern would be a 2-day run from Birmingham to Memphis. From the home of the blues, 610 would then make the return trip home to Texas with a single parts car in tow. Once arriving back to Fort Worth, the 610 Foundation would give up its dream of operating on local railroads and begin the search for a proper display site. Moved to an undeveloped piece of leased property, 610 would move to the Quartermaster Depot building where a ceremony would be held. In the mid-1980s, an idea sparked that would plan to have 610 pull the Independence Express to celebrate the 150th anniversary of the formation of the Republic of Texas. The idea would fall through thanks to a lack of funding and the railroad's skepticism on running the 610 on their main line. The property lease contract would soon be canceled, and 610 would have to find a new home. The Foundation opted to donate 610 to the Texas State Railroad Tourist Line. While they operated steam locomotives, 610 was deemed too large for their operations, so it would remain as a cosmetic display that the railroad shows off on special occasions. And that leads us where we are today. 610 still remains in Palestine for many to observe the true size of this locomotive. While one should never say never, the odds of 610 running again are quite low, but that does not take away some of the significant accomplishments that it has under its belt. If you enjoyed this video, please leave a like down below, and consider subscribing if you haven't already. I'm not usually one for remastering old videos, but for the 610, I figured it was worth making an exception. Until the next time, my friends, I'll be seeing you somewhere out there along the rails, and as always, thanks for watching.